Imagine sacrificing everything for your child, working multiple jobs, going without so they could have everything they wanted, paying for their education, their wedding, even helping them buy their first home. Now imagine that same child looking you in the eye and calling you an extra mouth to feed, before kicking you out of the house you helped them buy. That's exactly what happened to me 6 months ago. My daughter Jessica thought she could just discard me like yesterday's trash after everything I'd done for her. But what she didn't know was that I had been quietly building wealth for decades, and I was about to teach her the most expensive lesson of her life. By the end of this story, she would be paying me rent every month, and I would hold all the cards. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting mad, it's getting even. And trust me, I got more than even. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved unconditionally, you're going to want to hear every word of what I'm about to tell you. Because this isn't just about family betrayal, this is about the most satisfying payback you'll ever witness. My name is Margaret, and I need you to understand something. I was a devoted mother. When Jessica was born 28 years ago, her father walked out before she could even crawl. So there I was, 22 years old, trying to figure out how to raise a baby on my own. I worked 3 jobs: secretary during the day, cleaning offices at night, babysitting on weekends. Every sacrifice I made was for her future. When she wanted dance lessons, I worked extra shifts. When she needed a car for high school, I took out a second mortgage. When she got into college, I covered what scholarships didn't by eating ramen for 2 years straight. But here's what Jessica never knew. While I was sacrificing for her present, I was also building our future. Working at that law firm taught me about investments and real estate. Every tax refund, every bonus went into stocks, bonds, and rental properties. By the time Jessica graduated college, I owned 3 rental properties and had a portfolio worth over $400,000. But I never told her because I wanted her to learn hard work and independence. When she got engaged, I gave them $20,000 for their wedding. When they needed a house, I provided $50,000 for the down payment, calling it an early inheritance because I wanted to see her benefit while I was alive to enjoy her happiness. They bought a beautiful house in Sunset Gardens development. Jessica was thrilled, and I was proud to help make her dreams come true. I should have known it wouldn't last. Problems started when David lost his job a year after they bought the house. Suddenly their comfortable income became Jessica's salary alone. Around the same time, I was facing my own challenges. The law firm was downsizing, and at 62, the physical jobs were getting harder. I wasn't in financial trouble, my investments were thriving, but I was lonely. After 40 years of constant work, I found myself with nothing but cable TV for company. When Jessica called crying about money troubles, I suggested moving in temporarily to help with expenses and figure out my next steps. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. "Move in," she finally said, like I'd suggested something scandalous. "Just until you get back on your feet," I assured her. She reluctantly agreed. When they faced potential foreclosure, I moved into their smallest bedroom, contributed $600 monthly toward the mortgage, bought groceries, cooked and cleaned. For 8 months, I literally kept them afloat financially while being made to feel like an unwelcome guest. By month 6, I wasn't an appreciated mother anymore. I was a convenient ATM. They stopped thanking me for dinner, left messes for me to clean, and encouraged me to make myself scarce when friends visited. The breaking point came when I overheard Jessica on the phone. "I know she's my mom, but it's weird having her here all the time. I just wish she'd get the hint that she's not wanted anymore." Not wanted. After saving their house, funding their lifestyle, sacrificing my own comfort, I wasn't wanted. But I still hoped things would improve. Instead, they got worse. The explosion came on a Tuesday in October. David had gotten a small promotion, and I thought it was the perfect time to discuss my apartment search. "I've been looking at places," I said over dinner. "There's a nice 1-bedroom nearby. I could move by month's end." Jessica and David exchanged a look. "Actually, Mom, we need to talk about that," Jessica said. "David got this promotion, and we can handle the mortgage on our own now. We think it's time for you to find your own place." I just said I was looking. "We think it's time for you to find your own place soon. Like, end of the week." I stared at her. "End of the week? That's 4 days away. I know it seems fast, but David and I need to get back to being a normal married couple instead of—" She gestured vaguely. "Instead of what?" She took a deep breath. "And what came out next will be burned into my memory forever. Instead of us supporting an extra mouth when we are trying to build our own life." An extra mouth. 40 years of sacrifice, 8 months of saving their house, a lifetime of putting her first, and I was an extra mouth. An extra mouth, I repeated quietly. You know what I mean, Mom. We are trying to start our own family eventually, and we need our space back. Our space, the space I was paying for. I see, I said. I knew you'd understand, she smiled. You're always so reasonable. Reasonable, right. That night, I realized something crucial. I had raised a selfish, entitled person who saw my love as something she deserved rather than something I chose to give. But I also realized I wasn't the helpless single mother I'd been 28 years ago. I was a woman who had quietly built substantial wealth, and if Jessica wanted to treat me like a stranger, maybe it was time I started acting like one. The next morning, I called my financial advisor. I want to liquidate some investments and look into commercial real estate, I said. Commercial real estate? What are you thinking? I want to buy an apartment building. Something that needs work, but has good bones. Within 3 days, he found Maple Court Apartments, a 24-unit building owned by an elderly man tired of dealing with tenants and repairs. He was asking $680,000, under market value. Why so low? I asked. I'm 78 and want out, he sighed. The management company is worthless, and half my tenants are behind on rent. I toured every unit. Most needed cosmetic updates, but was structurally sound. More importantly, the building was managed by Hartwell Property Management, the same company handling rentals in Jessica's neighborhood. Hartwell was terrible. They charged high fees, rarely evicted non-paying tenants, and let properties deteriorate. But their incompetence was perfect for my plan. I offered $650,000 cash, with 30-day closing. He accepted immediately. While paperwork processed, I researched Jessica's neighborhood. Sunset Gardens had 180 homes, 60% rentals, all managed by Hartwell under an exclusive contract. But I discovered something else. Sunset Gardens Development Corporation was owned by 3 partners, and one wanted to sell his stake. How much money can I access for another major purchase? I asked my advisor. About $100,000 after the apartment building. But Margaret, I need to buy a third of a development company. I interrupted. I met with Richard Castellano, the selling partner. I want to liquidate and put money into something simpler, he explained. My third should be worth $800,000, but I'd take $650,000 for a fast sale. I offered $600,000 cash. He accepted. Suddenly, I owned a third of the company with ultimate authority over property management in Jessica's neighborhood. And as a partner, I could call for contract reviews including Hartwell's exclusive agreement. When I presented evidence of Hartwell's poor performance to my fellow partners, we voted unanimously to terminate their contract and hire my apartment building's excellent management company. Jessica's lease was up for renewal in 2 months. Their house was one of our rental properties, paying $1,400 for a property worth $2,100 in the current market. The rent increase notice went out. $2,100 monthly, effective January 1 st. The closing on Maple Court Apartments happened on a Thursday in November. By Friday morning, I had fired Hartwell Property Management and hired a company that actually knew how to collect rent and maintain properties properly. By the following Monday, I had started eviction proceedings against the 6 tenants who were more than 2 months behind on rent. The new management company was ruthlessly efficient. Within 2 weeks, they had collected over $30,000 in back rent that Hartwell had written off as uncollectible. The tenants who couldn't pay were given payment plans with strict deadlines, and those who wouldn't pay were out of the building within 30 days. By month's end, Maple Court was running at 90% occupancy, with tenants who actually paid their rent on time. The monthly income had increased by over 40%, and I was already making back my renovation investment. The success at Maple Court made it easy to convince my new partners at Sunset Gardens Development Corporation to let our new management company take over their properties as well. By month's end, Maple Court was running at 90% occupancy, with tenants who actually paid their rent on time. The monthly income had increased by over 40%, and I was already making back my renovation investment. The success at Maple Court made it easy to convince my new partners at Sunset Gardens Development Corporation to let our new management company take over their properties as well. The improvement in collections has been remarkable, I reported at our first monthly partners meeting. We went from 60% collection rates to 97% in just 4 weeks. I think we'll see similar results throughout the neighborhood. What I didn't mention was that I had specifically instructed the new management company to conduct a thorough review of every single lease in the development, with particular attention to properties that had been significantly underpriced due to Hartwell's poor management. Jessica and David's house was definitely one of those underpriced properties. They were paying $1,400 a month for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a 2-car garage in a neighborhood where comparable rentals were going for $2,000 to $2,200. Under Hartwell's lazy management, their rent hadn't been increased in over 2 years, despite rising property values and increased maintenance costs. When I saw that information in the management company's detailed report, I felt something that was part satisfaction and part genuine sadness. Satisfaction, because I was about to teach Jessica the most expensive lesson of her life about taking people for granted. Sadness, because our relationship had deteriorated to the point where I was actually planning to use business to hurt my own daughter. But she had made her choice when she called me an extra mouth. Now she was going to live with the consequences. The lease renewal notice went out on a Tuesday morning in late November, delivered by certified mail to ensure there would be no question about whether they had received it. The new monthly rent, $2,100, effective January 1st. A $700 increase that would bring their housing costs in line with current market rates. Jessica called me that evening, and for the first time in weeks, she actually sounded like she needed something from me. "Mom," she said, and I could hear the panic in her voice, "did you know that our rent is going up by $700 a month?" "Is it?" I said, as if I was hearing this shocking news for the first time. "That does sound like quite an increase." "It's not just an increase, Mom. It's devastating. We can't afford that. David's new job is okay, but it's not $700 a month better than unemployment." I made appropriately sympathetic noises while mentally calculating that they could have afforded the increase just fine if they hadn't kicked me out. The $600 I had been contributing toward their mortgage, plus the money they had been saving on groceries and utilities with me living there, would have more than covered the rent increase. "That does sound very challenging," I said in my most understanding voice. "We are going to have to move, Mom, in the middle of winter, with just 2 months' notice. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find a decent rental property with that kind of timeline? Everything good gets snatched up immediately." Actually, I did know exactly how difficult it was. I knew because I was currently renovating a 24-unit apartment building with several beautifully updated units that would be perfect for a young couple. Units that would rent for significantly less than $2,100 because they weren't in quite as desirable a neighborhood as Sunset Gardens. "I'm sure you'll figure something out," I said, unconsciously echoing her dismissive words from just a few months earlier. "You always do." There was a long pause, and I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. "Mom, I was wondering, and I know this might sound strange given how things ended with you living here, but do you think you could help us with this rent increase? Just temporarily, until David gets another promotion or finds a better paying job." And there it was, the moment I had been both expecting and dreading. After calling me an extra mouth to feed, after kicking me out with 4 days' notice, after treating me like an unwelcome stranger in the house I had helped them buy, she wanted my money again. "Help you how, exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Maybe you could contribute to the rent like you did when you were living here. I know we didn't part on the best terms, but we are family. And family helps family, right? Family helps family." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. "Jessica," I said very carefully, "when I was living with you, you made it very clear that I was an extra mouth to feed, and that you wanted me out of your life as quickly as possible. Now you want me to pay for you to live in a house that I'm not welcome in." "It's not like that, Mom. That whole thing was we just needed our space, as a married couple. But helping with rent is different." "How is it different?" Because you don't have to live here. You can just help us financially without the whole roommate situation." So I was good enough to be their personal ATM, just not good enough to be their family. I was useful for my money, but not worthy of their respect or consideration. "I see," I said. "And if I don't help, what happens then?" "Then we'll have to move somewhere cheaper, probably pretty far out of town where the rents are lower. It'll be much harder for David's commute, and we won't be in as nice a neighborhood. We might even have to move back in with his parents temporarily." I could hear the manipulation in her voice, the clear implication that their problems would somehow be my fault if I didn't rescue them. The suggestion that my refusal to help would be the cause of their downward spiral, rather than the natural consequence of their own choices, and circumstances point 2 months ago, that manipulation would have worked perfectly. 2 months ago, I would have written them a check for the difference without hesitation and felt guilty about even taking time to think about it. But 2 months ago, I hadn't been called an extra mouth. 2 months ago, I hadn't been kicked out with 4 days' notice. 2 months ago, I still believed that my daughter saw me as family instead of as a convenient source of financial support. That does sound very difficult, I said, my voice completely calm. But I'm sure you and David will work something out. So you won't help us? The disbelief in her voice was almost comical. Jessica, you made it very clear that you don't want me in your life. I am simply respecting your decision. But this is different. No, I said quietly but firmly. It's really not different at all. And I hung up the phone. Jessica called back 3 times that night. I didn't answer any of the calls. Jessica and David moved into my building in January. For a month, they seemed happy with their clean, affordable apartment. In February, I scheduled a routine maintenance inspection of their unit. When I knocked on Unit 2B, Jessica answered in yoga pants and confusion. "Can I help you? I'm here for the maintenance inspection," I said in my professional attire. It took her a moment to recognize me. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "I'm inspecting my property," I said, walking past her. "Your property?" I turned to face her, and watched understanding dawn in her eyes. "You own this building," she whispered. "I do. Purchased it around the time I was looking for a place after being kicked out with 4 days' notice." She sank into a chair. "Oh my God." David emerged, bewildered. "Margaret, what's going on?" "I was explaining to Jessica that I'm their landlord now," I said pleasantly. The silence was deafening. "How?" Jessica finally asked. "How do you own an apartment building?" "The same way I helped you buy your house, Jessica. I've been investing for decades. The difference is, I've stopped giving money to people who don't appreciate it. But this means your rent comes to me. I decide lease renewals. I control your housing situation the same way you controlled mine when you called me an extra mouth." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean." "You did mean it, Jessica. You taught me something important, that I was the only one invested in our relationship." "That's not true, isn't it? You only call when you need something. You've never asked how I was doing after you threw me out." "I was scared about money, about everything. I wanted to feel like we could handle things alone. And you can. You found this apartment yourselves. You're paying rent yourselves. I'm just your landlord now. But we're family. Family doesn't kick family out with 4 days' notice. Family doesn't call people extra mouths." I finished my inspection and headed for the door. "Your lease renews in November. Rent will increase to $2,100 monthly market rate. That's the same as the house." "Yes, the difference is this time you'll know exactly who you're paying." I paused at the door. "You're good tenants. If you want to stay long term, we can work something out." "And if we want to rebuild our relationship?" she asked quietly. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She appeared older, more tired, but also humbler than I'd seen since childhood. "That would be separate from business. If you want to work on being family again, that starts with respect and goes both ways." What followed wasn't instant forgiveness, but months of careful conversations, where we learned to be in each other's lives again. Jessica started calling weekly, not for money, but to talk. She asked about my work, investments, and plans. She told me about her job and hopes for the future. David apologized for enabling Jessica's treatment of me. "I should have spoken up," he said. "I should have reminded her you were helping from love, not obligation." The business relationship stayed professional. They paid rent on time, maintained the property, and followed lease terms. When renewal came, I offered standard terms, modest increases tied to market rates, but the personal relationship grew stronger than it had been in years. Jessica asked for advice about investing and building wealth. "I want to be financially independent like you," she said. "I want to take care of my family without depending on others. Then make choices based on long-term goals, not short-term comfort," I advised. "Every dollar spent is a dollar not invested in your future." She took it seriously. They budgeted, saved for retirement, and started building toward buying their own house again. But this time, they didn't ask for my help. "I want to earn this," Jessica explained. "I want to know we bought our house because we worked for it." I was proud of her growth. 6 months ago, Jessica called with exciting news. "Mom, I got promoted to marketing director. 30% raise, better benefits, real advancement opportunities." "What does this mean for you?" "It means David and I can finally afford our own house again. The question is, are we ready to move forward as a family?" She was asking if we'd repaired our relationship enough to trust each other again. I think we are, I said. Today, Jessica and David own their home again, having saved every penny themselves. I am proud of their accomplishment. They moved out with my blessing and glowing references. Jessica and I have weekly dinners now, talking about everything: work, investments, family, future hopes. She's pregnant with my first grandchild. I want this baby to know their grandmother, she told me. I want them to learn about hard work, smart decisions, and treating family with respect. Last week, she asked, when you bought my apartment building, were you trying to teach me a lesson or get revenge? Both, I answered honestly. I was hurt and wanted you to understand what it felt like to have someone else control your housing. But I also wanted you to learn that actions have consequences. Did it work? What do you think? She smiled. I learned my mother is stronger and smarter than I ever realized. And I learned that being family means choosing to treat each other with love and respect, even when it's hard. And the revenge part. The revenge was perfect. Not because it hurt, but because it made me grow up. I needed to learn I couldn't treat people badly and expect them to keep helping. So that's my story, how my daughter kicked me out for being an extra mouth and how I became her landlord. But it's really about self-respect, knowing your worth, and the difference between helping someone and enabling them. For years, I confused being a good mother with being a doormat. I thought love meant always saying yes, always helping, always putting someone else's needs before my own dignity. Jessica's betrayal taught me that real love sometimes means saying no, setting boundaries, and requiring respect even from your own children. The revenge was satisfying, but the real victory was rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect instead of one-sided dependence. Jessica learned I wasn't just a safety net, I was a successful, independent woman who deserved respect. I learned I had more strength than I'd realized. Together, we learned that family is about choice. Every day, we choose to treat each other with love and respect. Every day, we choose to be family. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you been taken for granted by someone you loved? How did you handle it? Are you still struggling to find your voice? Maybe you need to apologize to someone you've taken for granted. Either way, remember, you teach people how to treat you. If you accept less than your worth, that's what you'll get. But demand respect, and you might be surprised how relationships improve. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up for yourself, and subscribe for more stories about justice and knowing your worth. I post weekly about people who refuse to be doormats and fought for respect. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's becoming so successful that people have no choice but to respect you. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't let anyone treat you like an extra mouth. You're worth so much more than that.